Hello, I'm Dr. Scott Watier.
And I'm Tommy Welling, and you're listening to the Fasting for Life podcast.
This podcast is about using fasting as a tool to regain your health, achieve ultimate wellness, and live the life you truly deserve.
Each episode is a short conversation on a single topic with immediate actionable steps. We cover everything from fat loss and health and wellness to the science of lifestyle design.
We started Fasting for Life because of how fasting has transformed our lives, and we hope to share the tools that we have learned along the way. Hey everyone, welcome to the Fasting for Life podcast. My name is Dr. Scott Watier, and I'm here as always with my good friend and colleague Tommy Welling. Good afternoon to you, sir.
Hey Scott, how are you?
Doing fantastic, my friend. Excited for today's New Year's Eve episode. First and foremost, want to wish every single one of you listening in an absolutely happiest of New Year. 2026 is going to be amazing. We wish you all the best prosperity and blessings coming to you in the new year, and excited that we get to celebrate New Year's Eve with you on this episode today. And we're going to get into it here in just a second. We're going to be talking about an article that just came out in December, this month, December 10th of 2025, in Cell Host and Microbe. It's called The Microbial Metabolite Imidazole Propionate Modulates Hypothalamic Activity and Stress-Induced Behavior. So, man, that's a mouthful. So how we're going to frame this, we're going to take this study that was done in mice and then the data that's in the human studies that's out there and correlate it to a lot of the stuff that we've been talking around this time of the year, Tommy, about emotional eating and stress and travel and sleep and money and grief and law and all the holiday bag of fun that we have. The holidays are wonderful. Family, friends, a lot more opportunities, food environments, changes, travel, lack of sleep, etc. So we're going to get into all that. So we're going to name today's episode Holiday Emotional Eating is a Metabolic Brain Loop, Not a Character Flaw.
Ooh, I like that.
So we're going to talk about willpower. We're going to talk about decision-making. We're going to talk about mechanistically, physiologically, what's happening that drives your behaviors. And give a shout-out to episode 308. If you want to go back and listen to where we talk about fast cycling and foundational fasting habits, go back and give episode 308 a listen where we talk about just kind of this baseline fasting as your catch-all that still will allow you to keep momentum and move forward as we go from 2025 into 2026. Tommy, let's give a shout out to one of our 5-star reviews here.
Yeah, let's do it. Latest one, we had a few, and one that I see here is from Jessica 1040. She said, great listen, 5 stars. Thank you, Jessica. And she says, I'm a big Jen Stevens fan, so are we, and like to learn other ways people fast. This podcast is great and gives great advice. Thank you, Jessica, for noticing and giving us a shot, because there's a lot of fasting podcasts out there, and we know that, and everybody has kind of a different angle and approach and come from that they bring to the table. And I appreciate hearing different perspectives and also being able to know that not everything works for everybody all the time, and what resonates with you today might not be what resonates with somebody else tomorrow. So it's always good to be developing new fasting tools in your fasting tool belt. So thanks again, Jessica. Keep up the great work.
Yeah, absolutely. If you are new to the podcast, welcome in. As Jessica is new, thank you for taking the time to do that. If you're a long-term listener, thank you for being on this fasting journey with us. And if you want to know more about how fasting transformed our lives, head back to episode 0, episode 1, give it a listen. It'll give you some insight into what we're trying to do here at Fasting for Life, taking on this obesity and chronic lifestyle metabolic disease epidemic that we currently have, not just here in the States, but now we see worldwide. So starting point today, Tommy, is this article came into our purview as I'm part of Dr. Nick Norwitz's Substack. He's an MD, PhD. And the title really grabbed me initially. It said, How Metabolic Disease Feeds Emotional Eating, New Study Out Today. And I'm like, all right, I got to go find this study. And it's so new, we paid for it. We're like, nope, we got to get access. We need this study. And it really caught my eye, because inside of coaching and the challenges that we do and all the resources and the conversations we have with the thousands of listeners and hundreds of coaching folks, is we spend the majority of our time on the habit, lifestyle component of what it looks like to fast, to lose weight, and get healthy.
Agreed.
We do a poll at the end of every one of our challenges. The next one's coming up January 14th, so just in a couple of weeks. The link's in the show notes if you want to get more details, frequently asked questions, and register. But we do a poll at the end of every one of those challenges. Now, we've taken 65-ish, 100 people through now, and we do a poll. What are you worried about in terms of maintaining the momentum you gained during the fasting challenge or with your fasting lifestyle? And 80% of the time, what we hear back is, well, I'm worried about my food choices, my relationship with food, emotional eating, stress, nutrition, everything. 80% of the time, most of the time when we do our coaching calls on Thursdays, a lot of the questions are about lifestyle integration of your fasting tool belt, right? Of your fasting windows, of your navigating your social circles and your friends and family and loved ones and doctors and your life. So there's this customized, personalized component where blanket statements of making recommendations for, let's say, keto to reverse diabetes for 90 days, or low carb to increase insulin sensitivity, or what maintenance may look like. There's a customized piece to this. And because everybody's stressors and how they perceive and then act on that stress is different. So what we're looking to do with this episode is unpack, show you mechanistically how your underlying metabolic dysfunction or your lack of true metabolic health, your body's ability to process the food that you're eating and the food environment that we're in, leads to not a moral character flaw in your inability to stay on plan, but it truly is a mechanistic thing, a physiological thing that's happening that is causing you, if you're not aware of it, to continually repeat those bad habits and behaviors that you don't ultimately want, and that fuels the guilt, shame, weight loss, regain, train cycle. Yeah,
and then it's a continual loop that we can find ourselves stuck on, like the merry-go-round of dieting and why did I do it again? And oh man, that I had the best laid plan. I knew what I didn't want to do. I knew what I did want to do, but I didn't do all of those things. And here I am again. And just to understand that there's more going on than what we've been taught or what we currently understand. There's a state-of-the-art research going on, making the connection and really fleshing out the connection between the gut and the brain. And these things are so intricately linked, but that's not how we learned about them. We typically learn about these things in very compartmentalized ways, but it makes sense that everything's very connected, but we really are a system. And within that system, when one thing starts to change, like our blood sugar and our insulin response and our level of just insulin resistance, and then how that can affect the rest of the system, which then can lead to different emotional states and different behavioral changes as well. It makes sense that it relates to our food making decisions. We have so much food noise, and the research shows even at a normal weight, you're going to have over 200 food making thoughts and decisions on any given day. And then with your BMI, as it increases, as your weight increases, that number just goes up. And it can be in the 300 to 400 range if you're in the overweight or obese category. And when what we know about that is that comes with it a lot of opportunities for sticking to your fast, or to potentially not sticking to your fast, or making a choice that's in line with your long-term goals, or maybe one that's not in line with your long-term goals. So that's a lot of opportunity. And so to understand that it's not always just about pulling yourself up by your bootstraps and just using more willpower and just being stronger, rah. It's not always just about that. There's more things going on at play. Can then help us to understand what the factors are, and so how we can get a better grip on those factors through a better understanding of what's going on here.
And one thing that the paper states right in the beginning of the abstract, in humans, higher circulating imidazole propionate. So this is the chemical, the mechanism that we're going to be looking at. IMP levels are associated with reduced hypothalamic reactivity to food cues. So you're having a muted HPA or axis or stress response, impaired stress coping, and increased emotional eating. It's also then connected to things like prediabetes, diabetes, which lead to cardiometabolic issues, and Alzheimer's, which we know is an energy utilization problem or a blood sugar management problem at its core, foundationally related to insulin resistance and the fact that you're carrying the extra weight and your body is not able to burn the fat stores, and it's kind of stuck in this energy purgatory where it's constantly trying to just manage the food that's coming in, and then you're stuck with weight loss resistance and all the other things that come along with that. So
and higher blood sugar at the same time.
And absolutely higher blood sugar, more cravings. So the study that we're looking at here was specifically in mice, and it's not just a mouse story, right? IMP goes along with that quieter response to food cues, poor stress, and more emotional eating tendencies. So what we're going to be looking at here, and we're going to unpack this with some really actionable things that you can do on your day-to-day fasting lifestyle. But we want to show you really, first and foremost, what's that underlying mechanism? Because what we hear a lot is, all right, well, I was fasting and then it stopped working, or I kind of stopped doing it, or I tried to set my window and then my timer, and then I broke my fast early, or something came up, I traveled, or an external driver, a sick kid, a poor night of sleep, a stressful conversation with your boss. Those lifestyle things then drive I broke my fast early, or I couldn't close my window. I was great until about 8 to 10 p.m. And then I just felt possessed. Like I just couldn't close the window. I couldn't close the pantry door. So this is data as a brain-based explanation, not a character flaw in what you're trying to achieve with losing weight by adopting a fasting lifestyle. So we hear a lot using food to regulate stress, overwhelm, negative emotion. We just talked about this on one of our coaching calls recently, where that negative feedback loop actually drives you to get that dopamine hit from your food choices. But the problem what this IMP molecule is showing is that response is muted. So you're not getting the same hit. You're not getting that same elation from it. And metabolic disease, insulin resistance, impaired glucose handling, fatty liver, abdominal adiposity, so that central weight gain. These aren't just weight problems. They're neurometabolic problems that shift the hunger, the cravings, and ultimately your mood.
Yeah, and then when we feel that guilt shame cycle, then when the dopamine is low, we're in a dopamine deficit at that point. Then, of course, food and drink are very easy. They're very easy dopamine hits. It's easy to kind of justify something like breaking your fast early when it feels like that's the only thing that I'm kind of getting relief from, emotional relief, or positive feelings at that point. And then we only compound that when we're sitting there living in that like guilt shame cycle, like, ah, man, I did it again. Well, you're kind of beating yourself up while you're already down at that point, and you're only further diminishing the dopamine response. You're only increasing the need for more like stress relief at that point. And so then it becomes this vicious cycle. And then it's also a behavioral pattern too. So it feels like it's the easiest thing because it's what I've done most recently. So it's kind of hitting from all angles, and it can really feel like, yeah, that's tough to kind of break that cycle. So, that's why I love the shout out to episode 308, because when you're thinking about your foundational fast, it doesn't have to be an extremely difficult fast. It doesn't have to be crazy amounts of burn time, like for
every
fat
Monday I'm
burning
going to do a
purposes,
3-day fast.
Right. You can say something like that, and if you want to do that and you do it, that's awesome. It really is, but that doesn't have to be the goal. That you're just looking for the next longer fast. You focusing on your foundational fast, 14 hours, 15 hours, 16 hours, where you can do it and you're going to be doing it every single day or most days without having to muster up a whole lot of willpower and frustration or motivation. That's what can keep you on the better side, on the right side of lower glycogen levels. So a little faster to get into some fat burning, better metabolic efficiency, and actually making metabolic repairs that lead to lower IMP levels. So more a better stress response and a more
Yep.
accurate blood sugar and insulin response as well, which doesn't perpetuate this problem.
And that's why fasting is the tool that transforms it into a lifestyle, right? So we
Mhm.
don't want to just have fasting as another next diet strategy. So I want to unpack a little bit of what the study did into kind of what we do and what are the action steps that we can take
Mhm.
to make sure that we are rewiring and knowing what's going on. So it's not knowledge is power, but it's the application of that knowledge. So then we're going to walk you through what that looks like to walk this out in day-to-day life. So when we're looking at the article in our starting point, that IMP molecule is a microbiome-made metabolite that is higher in people with type 2 diabetes and other metabolic diseases, metabolic syndrome, fatty liver, visceral adiposity, etc.
Mhm.
So what they did with the mice, and this has already been accepted in human studies. So what they did with the mice, though, they infused these IMP levels, and they saw a huge shift in gene expression of the HPA axis, which is your body's stress response, right?
Mhm.
And behaviorally, the mice showed to freeze up, and they reduced their expiration in standard stress tests. So what happened is, under stress, the brain shifted to like a fear paralyzed state rather than a coping state and an ability to move forward with a decision.
Wow.
So the causal arc is disrupted metabolism, altered microbiome, more IMP production, crosses into the brain, alters your stress response circuitry, which then leads to more stress-related behaviors and emotional symptoms, resulting in emotional food cues and emotional eating.
Wow.
So, hungry, happy, angry, lonely, tired, bored, stressed. The halt the BS, right?
Mhm.
The lifestyle stuff that what are your stresses? What does your sleep look like? This is why we talk about this so much during the challenges and in coachings, because this is the stuff that really allows you to adapt a lifestyle rather than a fasting as just a weight loss type strategy. So when we're looking at this, and the reason we're talking about metabolic dysfunction is there was a study that came out in 2018, and then in 2021, when the world shut down, it was either glamorized, politicized, bastardized, whatever descriptive term you want to put in there,
Mhm.
that showed that 88% of the population was metabolically unfit. So we're not talking about, just lab panels. We're talking about what is your cell's response to the energy, what is your insulin functionality and insulin sensitivity, ultimately driving your overall health and homeostasis of the system. So when we're looking at this, we want to really kind of highlight this willpower dysfunction. So why willpower fails when you're trying to adopt this new lifestyle? Because if your stress response circuitry is biased towards that frozen emotion, like stuck state,
Mhm.
or that halt the BS state, emotional eating becomes a neurobiologic coping strategy, not just another list of bad choices that you ultimately did. The guilt shame cycle. It's not just bad choices, right? So you have this metabolic state, right? And we already mentioned there's different things that are incorporated in that. That will raise the IMP levels in the body, ultimately just fueling that cycle if you're not aware of how to break it efficiently. And that's what we're going to talk about next time, is what are the things that we can do to kind of insulate ourselves to allow our body to heal. And it's obviously going to include fasting, food choices, and some foundational habits.
Yeah, I mean, and just knowing that these mice in this study were like, they were less likely to explore all options in a stressed state means that you could be sitting there and like shutting your brain off to possibilities that are potentially right in front of you. And so it's really interesting if you look at like kind of it's not really a scattergram, but it's more like a trackpad, like you're looking exactly where the mice went and how their path kind of went around when they were in two different states of IMP levels. And it's like to see yourself in that situation going, okay, my stress response could be such that I'm really being blocked by to 50% of the possibilities of my routes in a stressful state. That's that's eye-opening in a way that I want to take control over that situation as quickly as possible, which means that, okay, what can I do about that? Okay, so some consistent fasting. Okay, that's great. Well, it starts with a foundational fasting. What is it 12 hours? Is it 14 hours? Is it 16 hours? What can I do that doesn't take a whole lot of willpower, that I can set my timer, so I can set a line in the sand, and I can get the dopamine hits when I do that, when I make the decision, and when I execute on that decision. So then I'm building trust with myself too. Okay, so let's put our ego aside that wants to do the next 48-hour fast, the next burn day. Let's not worry about that. I'm worried about what is my foundational fast here, because I need to pull this off most days. Okay, every day if possible. Not worry about what can I do every once in a while when I'm aiming for the fences here, like trying to swing for the fences. And then what about real-time feedback? Can I get some real-time feedback for my food choices, my sleep, my fasting? So what can I do? So what about a continuous glucose monitor, for example, or monitoring ketones, where I'm actually looking at what's going on in my blood within the day, intraday, or even between meals.
Yep.
So then my food choices at breakfast or lack thereof. So if I woke up and I fasted through breakfast and I'm planning for a later lunch versus a later dinner, then seeing what that does as far as my blood sugar control can be instrumental. Because if blood sugar is really kind of at the core of this issue, because the the bacteria that proliferate in the gut microbiome, whether it's good bacteria or bad bacteria, they're being fed by sugar. So the trouble there is that you have overgrowth of bad bacteria that essentially overtakes the environment, the ecosystem for where the good environment would be growing. And typically that happens in a stepwise correlated fashion with elevated blood sugars, because sugar feeds bacteria. If you remember back to basic biology, you're sitting there with a petri dish that's basically just some amino acids and some sugars. So then you're feeding into the issue. So if you can tighten up the goalpost, the acceptable range of your blood sugar, and you're getting real-time feedback on that through a continuous glucose monitor, then what you're able to do is go, okay, these were the decisions that I made. I went, let's say maybe you mentioned keto, like a cycle of keto before. So if you're doing that for 30 days or for 60 days, you can correlate that with how did your blood sugar respond. So yes, you'll know how you felt. It's going to make your next fast that much easier, but you're going to see how the numbers responded. And then you can look at your average blood sugar from week to week based on the decisions that you're making. So it's no longer like a blanket statement like all diabetics or all people with blood sugar issues should be doing some low carb dieting or some ketogenic dieting. No, this is personalized to you, because you might be experiencing a higher level of IMP and a lower level of stress response resiliency than what you would like to. So then you're able to see your own personal data based on your food making decisions and your fasting, and then you get real-time feedback that helps to balance out the equation, because it's a lack of balance right here, where you have all of these other factors that are overriding or certainly influencing your decisions and your emotional relationship with food.
Yeah, and that's why the human component of this, right? Emotional eating is more complex. You've got your history, your wiring from an early age. Finish your plate. There's starving kids in Africa.
Right.
Your cultural stuff. Like, I grew up in a family where there was always, bread first, and then the main meal, and then there was always a dessert and big glasses of soda or pop wherever you are. So your history, your environment, your past experiences, and the obesogenic, ultra processed, convenient DoorDash food noise filled world that we live in. So to your point there, Tommy, is that we need to shrink the IMP favoring environment.
Yes.
From in the gut is what I was hearing. So that's going to be a reduction of ultra processed, high sugar, refined carb foods to improve your metabolic function and your gut healing capabilities. The second thing that we're going to talk about is that fasting window. And that's why episode 308, we talked about 16-8 or 18-6 is your foundation. This is the new you. New year, new me, right?
Mm-hmm.
I actually misspoke earlier. It's the 30th. So
Yeah,
I
yeah.
said New Year's Eve.
Yep.
It's New Year's Eve.
New Year's Eve. Yeah.
So when 2026 hits on January 1st, new year, new you, right? Well, it's going to start with your foundation. So we want to, over time, get enough repetitions and practice at this. And your foundation should be your 16-8 or 18-6. And that episode highlighted all of the benefits you're still getting, even if the scale isn't rewarding you just yet. So this is going to allow you to then build in your fasting habit ladders, your fast cycling, start stacking those fasts, start planning out your week. The challenge on the 14th is going to walk you through exactly how we do that and what that looks like. The blueprint to fasting for fat loss as well, that 20-page PDF has some different fasting schedules in there. But this allows you on your stressful days, on the days where you have more holiday exposure and less sleep and travel and grief and money and all the stuff that comes around the holiday season, you didn't. So on the days where you only have 50% to give and you give 50%, well, you gave 100%, right? That's all you had on that day.
Yeah.
So if we keep this foundational strategy in place and then you build on top of it, that's really where we're going to see the biggest bang for your buck when we're talking about pairing your metabolic changes. So removing the sugars and the food frequency, so fasting and the ultra processed, refined, convenient foods that we have. You're going to pair that metabolic work that you're doing physiologically to decrease that IMP with your stress skills. So these are going to be like simple things that we talk about often: walking after your meals, breath work, earlier bedtime, boundaries around your evening screen and doom scrolling, right? So these are going to those triggers are going to reduce the drive combined when you're making those nutritional window choices, those better choices, the less refined, processed, sugary, carb-filled foods. That's going to allow you to decrease the frequency and the intensity of hey, I'm going to go back to food as my stress response or my coping mechanism.
Yeah. And then even you can take that a step further and go, okay, well, if you have a celebration, maybe it's a New Year's celebration or something else coming up. I have a January birthday. So that was always like one of the things that felt like it prolonged the holiday season for me. And then, and with that, like we've talked about it a few times recently, it's like, it's not the holiday. It's what did you do all of the other days of the
hold
week
on. So
and then
it's
the
not
year.
just the Thanksgiving meal and leftovers the next day. It's not just Christmas Eve and Christmas dinner and meals. And it's not just New Year's Eve and New Year's Day. It's not those 3 to 5 days.
Right.
It's what you did, like you just said, in between.
All of the
on
other
all of those other days.
Right. And so that being said, I think it could kind of start with just the fact that you don't need to feel guilt or shame about an upcoming holiday. If that's a big, opportunity for you, and there's certain things that you wouldn't normally partake in, or you don't think that they're really aligned with your long-term goals, but man, I just love certain foods, or grandma makes this this thing, and we all get together, and it's kind of a special time. You don't have to stress about that. It's one day, it's one thing, it's one time. That's fine. But when you go into a day like that, we also talked recently about what does your window look like on a holiday? Did you intentionally choose a 4-hour nutrition opportunity window and just say, you know what, this is going to be my nutrition time? And yeah, there's going to be some things that are involved that I don't normally have, or maybe it's a whole lot more carbs and a little fattier than normal. Okay. Oh, well, is it going to make the next day's fast a little bit tougher? Sure, but it'll be all right. And also, if you're thinking about it in terms of a foundational fast the next day, where you're going to set a 16-hour timer and not swing for the fences going for a 48-hour timer after a holiday, guess what? Your likelihood to succeed on that fast, it goes up exponentially. So if you just think about it like that, playing the long game, I think that's really, really important. And it's also going to reduce the amount of stress going into something that should be an enjoyable time, one of the most enjoyable times during the year, where we, specifically kind of orchestrate things that are enjoyable a lot of the time. So I think giving yourself permission to enjoy that with a plan for what am I going to be doing the next day and the day after that. And it starts with those foundational fasts, really kind of gives you an empowering mindset environment, but that also leads to an empowering physiological environment too, where your blood sugar was within, better controlled parameters, and thus your insulin was as well. So glycogen's better, and all of a sudden you find yourself a little bit more resilient for some of these stressors too.
And that's the reality of this cycle, right? Is that if you're carrying the excess weight, maybe you're already on the, liver enzymes are elevated, sleep's disrupted, haven't, scared of the yearly blood work, know you've got, the central weight gain that 75% of the population here in the US suffers with. It's not just a willpower problem, right? So you have this dysmetabolism, this state of your current metabolic state leads to the gut dysbiosis or the gut imbalance, which then leads to the higher IMP, which then leads to the altered stress response in your stress circuitry, which then leads to stressy, avoidant, emotional eating behavior patterns, right? So it's not a willpower problem. It's an underlying physiology problem that's manifesting itself in the behaviors and your default patterns that you currently have. So by doing consistent foundational fasting, by making one or two better food choices and removing the ultra processed, ultra, highly hedonic, high fat, high carb foods, fasting is going to improve the insulin signaling and your metabolic flexibility. And we always say is like, let's get the weight off quick. Like let's not eat less, move more, low and slow. Let's get the scale moving, because that ultimately gives you the fortitude to say, you know what, I am excited about this. I do have tools in my tool belt that I know I can always go back to, even if it's just your baseline foundation that we've been talking about. Starting the year off with the new year, new you type mentality with New Year's resolutions, we know they fail, right? We know the stats are pretty clear by February 1st. This is where gyms make most of their money every single year, right? So we want to be tapping into the underlying physiology, setting up the environment for success, and then being able to interpret in real time, hey, you know what? Right now, maybe it's not the time to have the second piece of cake from grandma. Let's ask her to package it up for me and send it home. And instead of sitting in the chair post Thanksgiving and taking a nap, which I had a conversation with a friend, a family member at Thanksgiving. We traveled for Thanksgiving this year. And, he piled it up and made his plate. And then he literally said to me, yeah, I do this every year. I'm going to go upstairs, find a place to nap for 20 minutes, and then come down and get a second serving. And I'm like, man, and by the way, he's as thin as a rail, right? He's that person.
Okay. Yeah.
Not so sure about healthy, but thin as a rail, but he can pull that off. If I did that, I would have to go home and sleep for the next 12 hours. Right. So we want to create this feedback loop where we're in the present time, present time consciousness, where we're aware of the decisions we're making and understand the physiology that we're up against, but also that empowers us to then continually making those decisions. So we want to see you win in 2026, which is why we're actually doing our first challenge coming up on January 14th.
Yeah, it's going to be really, really good. And, to start the year off with a bang, I feel like how you start the year is going to be how you finish the year, right? Yep. You told me that a few years back, and it really stuck with me, because it's like, it's not necessarily about a New Year's resolution, but when you have your eye on the prize as far as what you want your lifestyle to look like this year, and you make deliberate steps that can be outside of your comfort zone at the beginning of the year, then you're building a momentum that you can continue to pick up. And it's not a resolution type, oh, okay, well, once I kind of lose motivation on that one thing, then it just kind of goes by the wayside. No, it's lifestyle driven. So, even if it feels stronger at the beginning of the year, and then maybe it wanes a little bit, a few weeks or a couple months after that, guess what? That doesn't mean it has to go away. It doesn't have to go to zero. We're talking about baseline foundational habits that can stick with you even when a day doesn't feel like a 10. That's how you define lifestyle right there, is that it's not just this lightning in a bottle kind of thing. All or nothing, on or off. And you mentioned continuous feedback. I wanted to give a shout out to ketones and taking a look at your ketones too, because Keto Mojo has been an instrumental tool for both of us at different parts along our fasting journey, because there's a matter of metabolic flexibility getting into a state of ketosis. So when
it's empowering.
It's very empowering,
especially when the hunger hits.
Right, to know what's going on underneath the hood, especially when the hunger hits, maybe the lethargy kind of hit. Maybe all of a sudden I feel like, oh man, I'm just low energy. Guess what? There is a good chance that it's when you're glycogen depleted, which is good. You have to be there before you can start the fat burning process, but your body doesn't necessarily have access to those fat stores just yet. You may not have produce the fat burning enzymes in sufficient quantity just yet, and your body's kind of playing catch up. And that catch up gap right there is part of how we define metabolic flexibility.
It's where a lot of people will fall off too.
Yes, it's where it can feel stressful. It can feel emotional. It can feel like, man, maybe I should just break this fast a little bit early. Yep. Well, you go to check your ketones, you see your ketones are starting to rise. That can be just enough to go, yeah, you know what? This is a good spot to be in.
Little extra motivation.
Yes, I want to keep this going. I bet on the other side of this, I'm not only going to feel better, but my body's going to be doing something new also, getting into a state of fat burning that I'm not typically in. So that can be enough to like hit the gas rather than pull back on the process, right?
Yep. So as we wrap up today, as we come out of the holiday season, the default behavior patterns, the emotional cues, the abnormal stress response, it's not a personal failure, right? It's a predictable outcome of a stressed out brain running on a metabolically imbalanced system with a gut-driven chemistry set, right? And when you're using fasting, food quality, and simple stress tools intentionally as you come out of the 2025 holiday season, so you're not just white-knuckling it, you're actively rewiring the gut-brain metabolic loop so that we can start off 2026 with massive momentum and make this the best year yet. So, Tommy,
wow.
As we wrap up today's conversation, excited for 2026. Once again, I want to wish every one of you an absolutely amazing, happy new year. To all of you listening in, we are excited for 2026. We got some big things planned here at Fasting for Life. If you're looking for more support or resources or details on the upcoming challenge, you can head to the show notes, click a link, shoot us a message or a question. We absolutely want to hear from you. And as always, Tommy, I appreciate the conversation, and we will talk soon.
Thank you. Bye. So, you've heard today's episode, and you may be wondering, where do I start? Head on over to thefastingforlife.com and sign up for our newsletter, where you'll receive fasting tips and strategies to maximize results and fit fasting into your day-to-day life.
While you're there, download your free Fast Start guide to get started today. Don't forget to subscribe on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Make sure to leave us a 5-star review, and we'll be back next week with another episode of Fasting for Life.